I, a 17-year-old male, haven't had a very involved relationship with my dad, and I've always been surrounded by women. I even find it easier to make friends with females than with males. I've been worried that this might have negative effects on me in the future. Story 1. You do need some guys around, in my opinion. I was mostly friends with girls growing up. These girls will find partners, but may not have much advice on how to find one since they have not experienced life as a man. I appreciate my female friendships as they have been great, but I feel somewhat shortchanged. Now that I'm 28, women are cautious about my friendship if they are in serious relationships, as the men they are with may view me oddly. Story 2. Women are different from men. If you want to get along with men, you need to spend time with them. What are your hobbies and interests? Story 3. As someone who grew up with a difficult father who only taught me how not to be, but had an amazing mother and sister, you may already have male role models without realizing it. I didn't realize it until the actor who played Uncle Phil on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air passed away that his character was a role model to me. You also have plenty of time to find role models. I found one in my 20s. My friend's dad was an amazing father and was always present. When they found out I was spending holidays alone, they took me in. He became like a dad to me as well. I recently lost him and it was difficult. Story 4. It is extremely important to start spending more time forming genuine relationships with men who are older than you. There are aspects of yourself, others, and the world that you may never understand unless you are exposed to the perspective of your own gender. If you do not seek this exposure, you may remain limited to a female perspective, making it more challenging to relate to other women and to yourself. This can lead to misplaced blame on men for your misunderstandings, when it is actually a lack of perspective that prevents you from understanding. Consider this a form of education that is essential not to overlook. Those who have spent their lives solely in the feminine perspective may reject this idea. If you are unsure what it would mean or feel like to see from a male point of view, it may be because you have only ever known the female one. Story 5. You can search for studies on this topic. The absence of male or female mentors can have an impact, but it is just one factor and should not be considered the sole reason for any issues. Story 6. What an age at 17. Respectfully, no hate, but it's important to find healthy male friends and role models. Avoid those involved in clubbing, alcohol, or drugs. Seek men who are competitive, supportive of one another, and focused on building a strong group. With women, there is a risk of becoming passive and adopting the nice guy persona. On the other hand, healthy, good-natured men do not tolerate that niceness. They appreciate goodness defined by values and thoughtful actions, which will help you grow into a healthy man. It's fine to observe how women act and respond, but often, as the old saying goes, women understand women, and they can be critical of one another. Women are human, but at times they can be socially aggressive. Personally, being a man means mastering your physicality, which fosters confidence in pursuing goals, learning, and generally being a great person to both men and women. However, be warned that not all men are good-natured. Some thrive on being a messiah. Therefore, remain critical, open-minded, and skeptical at all times. Story 7. Very important. It's good to have female friends, but you can't take life and dating advice from women because our lives are vastly different. Story 8. If you feel you need more mentorship from other men, you likely do. If you don't and are only hearing it from others, remember that being a man means you get to define what being a man means. Story 9. I was never close to my dad. I grew up mostly with my mom and 3 sisters. Finding a mentor is not essential, but you should definitely be social. Make friends of both genders and seek out people to learn from, such as teachers, philosophers, and skilled workers. You can and should learn lessons from everywhere. There is no need to fixate on the idea of male role models. Just be yourself. People who suggest otherwise often want to be someone else. Story 10. I have never had a positive male mentor in my entire life. I have friends and I am married with 2 great kids. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Story 11. I did not have any close male role models growing up. Raised in a household with my mother and 3 sisters, I turned out fine, though I was considered a late bloomer socially. I believe it is important to find hobbies and interests that allow you to meet and interact with a wide variety of people. However, I don't think being raised in a female-dominated household has had any ill effect on me, and I don't believe it will on you either. Story 12. The fact that you are asking this question is all the assurance I need to know you will be just fine. The first step in working on something is always identification, in which most people fail. I am the oldest person in my generation. I was mostly surrounded by women growing up. The only negative influence it had on me was to convince me of the pervasiveness and normalization of patriarchal systems in all of modern society. It is hard to dismiss it after having seen the world for so long through the eyes of women. Also, it is a good thing that it is easier to talk to women. Many men are incapable of having meaningful conversations with women. You will not have that problem. Do not worry. You will be fine. Story 13. The importance of having a role model to respect and learn from cannot be overstated. If you don't have any men in your life to act as your mentor, I recommend getting involved in sports, martial arts, or a youth program focusing on men's activities. Story 14. Build a relationship with your father or find an uncle or an older, experienced brother. The best place to look for a mentor is within your own family. Yes, you can learn a lot from women, but as a man, the influence and impression another man makes on you is very different. You are more inclined to follow their actions because you relate more to them. My mother taught me most of my values, but seeing my father put those values into action strengthened my belief in them. Story 15. Boys without positive male role models, such as fathers, grandfathers, or uncles, tend to have poorer outcomes. This is particularly evident in educational achievements, maintaining marriages, and avoiding incarceration. Story 16. It may or may not be. Keep a skeptical but open mind when developing relationships with other adult men as the years go by. Pay attention, absorb, and learn what makes sense. Reject what does not, and continue this process as life progresses. I am middle-aged now and understand that I will never be done growing and changing until I die. Story 17. It is very important to note that making female friends can be easier if you are well-centered in your masculinity. However, it is essential to have at least a group of men you can rely on and discuss issues that only men can address with other men. Having female friends will not negatively impact your future unless you allow it, such as by taking advice on the male perspective from them and letting that shape your character. Story 18. This isn't a fun statistic, but 66% of violent criminals are fatherless, and an additional 25% had alcoholic or abusive fathers. A positive male role model, preferably a dedicated father figure, seems essential in the life of a healthy, well-adjusted man. Story 19. It is important, and you have taken an incredible step by asking this question at a young age. If you feel too old for a mentor, my next question is whether you are part of a church or organized sports. Do you have a friend whose father is a cool person who would support you? Having a strong male figure with good ethics, morals, and values will be helpful before you know it. In college, you can join a fraternity and gain a big brother, but you will also likely benefit from a more mature father figure. Groups of young boys and immature men have a lot of fun, but they often engage in reckless behavior. Eventually, you'll want a trusted adult to remind you when it's time to grow up. Story 20. There is certainly nothing wrong with having many platonic female friends or being close to the women in your family. However, men turning to other men for emotional support is a key aspect of male empowerment. You just need a circle of male friends with whom you are compatible in terms of personality, demeanor, and life priorities. They are out there. It's just a matter of finding them. Story 21. I used to be very feminine as a teenager because I was raised by my mom and aunts. I need to find a male figure, at least a friend who might influence me. Story 22. I was in your position. Now my wife is my only friend. Try to avoid ending up here if you can. It's not the worst situation, but it would be nice to have someone to help me with things that my wife can't lift now that the kids are grown and gone. Story 23. It depends on the person. Some young men do not know how to handle the transition into adulthood, which can manifest in self-defeating ways. As a teenager, I mostly had female friends. The challenge I faced was that while I was very good at relating to women platonically, I struggled to connect with them romantically, as those are very different experiences. I was fortunate to have a very assertive first girlfriend who taught me a lot about this. Story 24. It's not about having a male mentor. It's more about being able to handle your problems and find solutions. The amount my dad can fix and build is much greater than mine. Standing up for yourself and your friends is important. You don't necessarily need a man, but it can be helpful. Discipline and respect for others are essential. I believe that if you are surrounded only by women but participate in sports and are competitive, you will be fine. If you are not competitive, then I am not sure. Story 25. The gender of my mentors does not matter to me. My old guitar teacher could have been from a different gender or species, and I still would have valued their experience. Story 26. I am an adult male living with 4 females of various ages. I would say it is not a big deal. Just take care of your responsibilities. That is all a man has to do to be fine. Get up when you are supposed to, do what you need to do, and accomplish something every day. You do not really need a role model to guide you. You can simply do it yourself. Story 27. It is really important. I find it easier to make female friends than male friends. I would describe that as a negative effect you are already experiencing. Story 28. You need to find a good male mentor or role model. Spend more time with men. There are situations in 5 to 10 years where maturity will be needed. Story 29. Before saying more, it sounds like those around you are doing a good job already, and your dad is teaching you valuable lessons. In other words, it is important but should not detract from what the women in your life have already accomplished. Try a few activities. As others have mentioned, martial arts can be beneficial. However, I see it as part of a well-rounded education rather than a male-centric activity. Be selective about which form you choose. You mentioned an interest in being an architect. Consider getting a job with a contractor for a while. Keep in mind that tradespeople can be a bit rough around the edges but are often good individuals. It's people like that who taught me not to judge by appearances. In the future, if individuals like that work under you, they will respect you more. I work in fabrication, and you can easily identify engineers who lack real-world experience. They often struggle in practical situations. Decent individuals do not need to put on a show to prove their worth. If someone has an attitude about being the dominant type, they are not worth your time. If they feel the need to belittle or demean others, especially women, they are not worth your consideration. Story 30. Honestly, it's not important at all. All the men in my family were difficult growing up. I clung to my mother, sisters, and aunts. My story is much like yours. As you get older, you will experience no negative effects. In fact, you will find it much easier to communicate with women. You will develop more empathy, be kinder, and women will notice. As for the men, no one will care after you gain a few more years. Don't change your situation. Keep spending time with women. Story 31. Yes, it will have negative effects on you in the future. You need to cultivate male relationships to build your masculine traits. Men who only associate with women may sometimes be considered feminized. Story 32. If you have the opportunity to reconnect with your father and ask him for advice, it would be significant, especially regarding finances and relationships. Story 33. I grew up without a male role model, and the repercussions lasted for a long time. It is important to find a positive male role model. Story 34. You are in a very negative environment. I grew up similarly to you. The only way I developed as a man was through part-time work, where I often spoke with male managers and quietly asked them questions. It was through this that I witnessed adult male behavior. The rest of the time, I lived in a household where my male was censored by a very controlling mother, while my father lived in another country. Seek part-time work under male managers, not female managers. Join a rough sports team, something exclusive to males. Consider joining the reserves or territorial army to learn teamwork among men. I practice karate for my self-confidence because my health precluded me from joining sports teams or the military. I even find it easier to make female friends than male friends. This indicates that you have been feminized, which will not help you in life. While women may say they want a man who can express his emotions, they often gravitate toward the sports hero, the wealthy leader, the war hero, or the man in uniform. None of these individuals exhibit feminized traits. It's Mother Nature within us that is pre-programmed at birth to seek natural roles. And now, I expect criticism from feminists for this post, but I don't care. This young man needs help, and I am happy to talk to him man to man. Story 35. It's not important. It's essential. You won't be fully who you are until you distill observations about men you admire into a solid conception of being a man. You will always experience different pressures and constraints compared to women, and you will view things differently than they do. Consequently, their approaches and solutions to life will often not work for you. It's not optional. Story 36. There is a reason people who grow up without a father are significantly more likely to end up in prison. Male role models are important for a growing child. This does not apply to everyone, of course. My fiancée grew up without a father, and she is very successful, but the point remains. Story 37. A father's purpose is to protect you from your mother. Without a male influence, you may be raised without a strong foundation. The emotional instability of a woman combined with the potential for violence in a man can lead to difficult outcomes, often resulting in prison or a weak man who lacks respect and authority. Seek out positive male role models. Story 38. A good male role model is very important. Do not seek the advice of someone lacking wisdom and basic hygiene. The only issue is that they are becoming rare in some countries. Story 39. I was the only male in my house. I attended a boys' school, but it was quite challenging, and home was no better. I have relied heavily on mentors, most of whom have been male. Do not underestimate female mentors. They have much to teach you about being a good man, sometimes even more. I understand your struggles, young friend. I'm cheering for you. As I have grown older, I now mentor a couple of younger individuals in my industry, and it is one of the most fulfilling things I do at work. There are men out there looking for ments, and you will find one with whom you connect. Male solidarity may not be prominent, but it is improving. With much respect. Story 40. Caleb Hammer recently conducted a financial audit with a man who was homeschooled alongside his sisters, both of whom were raised and educated by their mother, and spent little time with other boys or men. The thumbnail is unusual and possibly satirical, diverging from the channel's typical style. That said, you have full control over your actions, and those actions significantly influence who you become. A good role model can be a valuable asset, but even if you cannot find one, you can seek guidance from books and historical examples. It is important to recognize that as an adult, you share equal responsibility for your relationship with your parents. When you turn 18, it becomes your responsibility to cultivate a meaningful relationship with your father. My advice is to avoid dwelling on or debating the past, and do not wait for a middle-aged person with their own regrets and complications to change. Reach out and say, "Growing up, we didn't have the relationship I desired. I understand it was complicated, but I am an adult now and can create the life I want without obstacles. I would like you to step up and be part of my life now, while you are still here, instead of when it is too late. After that, take things as they come and be the bigger person if necessary. If he proves to be unhelpful, ask if he has a brother or cousin who can fill that role." One interesting truth about men is that they often enjoy helping others and finding value in their contributions, which is a source of their self-esteem. If you seek them out, you may find someone willing to share their knowledge with you in exchange for your appreciation. There is a great deal about men's lives that women may not consider or understand. When they do notice, it's often in the context of high-achieving men, which sets a standard for judgment. It is noteworthy that a disproportionate number of CEOs are men. However, it is rarely acknowledged that a disproportionate share of the homeless, those who commit suicide, experience workplace injuries, and victims of violence are also men. A good role model or mentor can help you navigate this reality, as you won't always be at the top. If you struggle to find a mentor, consider the Benjamin Franklin effect, which suggests that people tend to like you more after doing you a favor. This can be advantageous when engaging with healthy, happy, and/or successful men. Finally, my definition of being a real man is doing what you believe is right for yourself, irrespective of others' opinions. If you want to pursue ballet and tell anyone who judges you to disregard their comments, you embody the essence of a real man. If you allow others to pressure you into mixed martial arts due to insecurity or shame, then you have some growth to pursue. Story 41. In case you want to learn a few things, this is a nice channel. Story 42. It is extremely important for a father to teach a boy how to become a man. A woman cannot fulfill this role. When a father is not present in the home and there are no other male figures to assume this responsibility, boys are more likely to develop feminine, emotional, and unstable traits. Fathers and brotherhood are vital for the development of young men. Additionally, women generally prefer men who are more masculine than themselves. Men who mainly have female friends often come across as passive and are frequently the ones labeled as nice guy creepers. If you find it easier to relate to women than to men, this may be problematic. Women may enjoy having these types of men as friends, but 9 times out of 10, they are not interested in dating them. I have witnessed this multiple times. Story 43. It's important in some settings and less so in others. Most of my life, I have been involved in women-majority sports like dancing and theater, and most of my friends are women. However, I do have a good bond with both my father and mother and have maintained a mostly equal split when it comes to friends. To make some generalizations, the most notable differences lie in the ways men and women solve conflicts. I sometimes surprise my female friends when I propose a more assertive solution to a problem, while my male friends view it as standing your ground and earning respect from the person you are in conflict with. I disagree, but I respect your opinion is easier to convey to men. With women, I often end up talking more and seeking common ground. Both approaches have their merits. It's not as if one is better than the other. Confusing a person by not acting as they expect can surprisingly lead to friendship. Asking an angry man why he is so upset, showing sympathy, and inquiring how he would like support can be as effective as telling a woman that you have reached your limit because you have tried a more considerate approach, and vice versa. The negative outcomes can involve either physical fights or people walking away in anger, creating difficulties later. In terms of social activities, it is easier and more accepted to have friendly rivalries with men. Challenging each other is more manageable if you are physically matched. At 37, being one of the few emotionally vulnerable men has become a significant advantage in dating. At 25, it certainly was not. I learned how to flirt with women later in life because interacting with them felt so normalized. I probably had more charm than I realized at the time. Story 44. It is critical for a young man to have multiple male figures around him. Women may not understand what they are unaware of, so they cannot comprehend it, and they may not realize it even exists. The same is true for men. We do not fully understand what it means to be a woman, but it is essential to understand what it means to be a man. For that, you need to know several men well enough to understand the options and make informed choices about the kind of man you want to be. For reasons I did not understand until my 50s, I had very limited time around men while growing up, and it took me much too long to grasp some very important lessons. Story 45. For older role models, I don't think it's that important. Personally, I had no male figures in my life apart from those in my friend group. I taught myself, or rather YouTube taught me, traditionally masculine skills such as shaving, fixing things around the house, and servicing a car. I play sports, go to the gym, travel the world, have a good degree and job, and have been in relationships. Story 46. It would help you in various ways, including how to fix cars or plumbing, and learning what to accept from women, such as unacceptable behavior and gaslighting. If you find one or more men whose children are older, they likely have the capacity to accept and care for you in the way men need. I would offer to help you, but we are in different countries. Story 47. You need that in your life. I was mostly around guys with 2 brothers and not many close friends who were girls, other than my mom. Dating and understanding women was tricky for a long time, and I assume it goes both ways. Maybe consider taking up martial arts or joining a recreational sports league. Story 48. It is essential for young men to have a masculine role model in their lives. This presence should be balanced. They cannot solely be surrounded by feminine influences. Story 49. It's crucial for boys who grow up without masculine role models, such as fathers, older brothers, cousins, or friends, to avoid becoming overly emotional and struggling to manage their feelings. Without proper guidance, they may find it difficult to control their anger, which could lead them to commit crimes and end up in jail, where they are often surrounded by others lacking strength. Story 50. The main reason you need to have male role models around is to answer any questions about male anatomy that you might be curious about. Learning what's normal for male anatomy and what is not, and having someone you trust to ask these questions is very important. I had two friends who had testicular cancer as young men. If they had no one to ask whether they should have it checked out, I am sure their outcomes would have been different. Both are fine now. The questions I have received from my nephews, where I assured them that what they were experiencing was normal, maybe not common in the male population but still normal, were equally important. I explained to them that it was like seeing a pink car. You don't see them very often, but they still exist and nobody reacts. Another reason is that you need to learn how to handle some abuse from male coworkers without taking it personally. You should also learn to give it back if necessary. In other words, you need to know how to deal with difficult people and how to let certain comments roll off your back. So when it's someone other than your friend making a comment, it should still roll off your back and not become a bigger deal. A beneficial lesson to learn is how to walk away from a fight and how to project an aura of confidence so that others do not try to mess with you in the first place. Anyone making fun of your physical appearance is merely trying to affect your confidence for a competitive advantage. When you are older in the working world, these mentors guide you and inform you about the unwritten rules and political aspects of life. I hope you can find more than one mentor you can fully trust, and another to provide verification and different opinions. You can always ask questions through online communities or, if needed, you can message me, and I will answer when I can. Story 51. It is very important, especially if they have behavioral issues, which they likely will if they lack male role models. Story 52. I grew up with the memory of my grandfather after the age of 13, without other role models in my life. I had to learn from television, books, and movies. It took me until a couple of years ago to correct my course from all that misinformation. I love my mother dearly, but a mother can never replace a male role model. That said, I have great respect for those who try. Story 53. If a man has ethics and morals and respects his wife or the mother of his child, it helps a young man learn by example what a man can provide in a family and relationship. Story 54. I believe you should make some friends with other guys. It will help you, especially if you need to discuss things that you might not want to address with a female. Growing up, I lived with my mother and sisters, and it was difficult not having anyone understand me. However, I was fortunate to have friends I could talk to and visit whenever I needed an escape. So you should try to make some friends. Story 55. I am a dad who grew up without a father but had many stepfathers. I believe a father can expose you to things in safe environments and help you adjust to them. A father is like a pillar that provides a sense of security. Furthermore, only a man can teach you what it means to be a man, through the example of another man. Our world is primarily logical, with men often focused on things and women more oriented toward people. Hence, we tend to be logical while women are emotional. As a teenager, you need both qualities to develop a strong sense of self and a solid moral foundation. Story 56. It is very important to have a positive influence rather than a negative one. It is easier to learn along the way than to unlearn and relearn. As someone who grew up around mostly women and girls, I found it to be a dangerous situation. I was being manipulated without even realizing it until I reached adulthood. Even well-meaning women cannot teach a man how to be a man. Story 57. While I grew up in a house full of females, I would say that despite my father not being around often due to divorce, he visited for a weekend every month. My mom's boyfriend of 2 decades was also a significant presence. I focused on the positive aspects they displayed because that was my main experience growing up. Along with my male friends and school counselors, I had a decent environment for personal development and discovering who I wanted to be. Story 58. A woman can teach a boy how to treat women, but the best person to teach a boy or young man how to be a man is a man. Story 59. You must puncture the ultimate heart of masculinity to smell of diesel and develop a strong grip. I cannot show you the way, for it is yours to discover. On the highest mountain top of the Himalayas, you shall wear denim shorts and learn that sometimes the highest form of mastery is forgiveness. Story 60. It is absolutely essential to recognize that boys without positive male role models can struggle significantly. It is important to understand that women alone may face challenges in raising boys effectively. Story 61. I grew up in a similar dynamic. Being gay also didn't help in searching for a male mentor figure, which led to many complex issues. While having a male mentor can be beneficial, it places a lot of pressure on someone. Ultimately, it's only an issue if you perceive it as one. As long as the women in your life provide a safe and loving home, you'll be all right. No one gets through life unscathed. We all face setbacks and wish things had turned out differently. The fact that you're aware of this potential issue is good, but don't dwell on it. Your life and its trajectory are largely determined by you, and no male role model can change who you are. I didn't appreciate this at your age. I'm 35. But you really do have your whole life ahead of you. The next 8 years are some of the most transformative. No matter what you do, there will be things you regret. This may sound more depressing than intended. If there's one message I could share with my younger self, it's to not worry about what you think you need in your life. Just live it. Experience joy and heartbreak. There's so much more to life than needing a specific type of parental figure. Focus on finding happiness, joy, and love. You can only work with the hand you were dealt, and despite missing that male parental figure, it sounds like you still have much to cherish. Story 62. More like a mentor, you need examples to help shape your personality as a man, including your perceptions of good and bad. I grew up with 3 adult women as role models and no father. My older brother assisted me, but he exhibited traits of a toxic alpha male. There are different ways to be a good man in this world, but you need to explore that for yourself. Story 63. You are likely better off being around women at this age. Most of us struggle to learn how to interact with women. As you get older, you may have some difficulty interacting with men, but I believe that is an easier problem to solve. Story 64. I find it easier to make female friends than male friends. I've been concerned that this might have negative effects on me in the future. It seems like it is already having negative effects. Story 65. I will provide a few different perspectives. My brother and I always had a strong male role model in our lives. Despite my struggles in my 20s and until I was about 35, I have since got my act together and learned that regarding most things, my dad was mostly right. My brother, on the other hand, has been in and out of jail, has worked menial jobs, and still has lofty dreams of his music career taking off, which is unlikely. My youngest brother, with whom I had virtually no interaction since I was already 17 when he was born, was a childhood prodigy and also a musician. He still lives with my father and his mother, not my mother. Granted, he is also a professor of music and lives with them more to help support them than himself. Now, my brother-in-law grew up with 3 women in the house and is a broken individual. He struggles with alcoholism, has 2 kids, and an ex-wife. He has an attitude problem and emotional issues and really cannot deal with life on his own. He maintains a manual labor job and that's about it. He drinks himself to sleep every day, wakes up, goes to work, and repeats this cycle. His sisters, my wife and her sister, cared for him every step of the way growing up. His mother still babies him. Honestly, he's unlikely to amount to anything, and my wife truly believes that it's because he didn't have a good, influential male role model in his life. In conclusion, having a positive male role model does not guarantee you'll be okay later in life. However, not having one increases the likelihood that your life will be challenging, and this is my limited perspective. Story 66. I think it depends on how the women treat him. Smart, well-balanced mothers can raise boys effectively by stepping outside of their comfort zone when needed. However, some women do not understand boys and may teach them the wrong lessons, which can lead to issues later on. By the time a boy is 17, most of this development has already occurred. It is unlikely that he will change significantly from that point forward. Story 67. Yes, absolutely, in my opinion. We learn from others, both good and bad. Connect with someone who has their life together and is respected. Avoid individuals who seem overly arrogant. Story 68. Honestly, the greenest flags I've met are men with sisters because they are kind and gentle, and know how to treat women kindly and with respect. The male gaze tends to perceive the most attractive men as those who are hypermasculine, but ask any woman and you'll realize the female gaze includes men who have healthy feminine traits, such as being open to discussing and feeling emotions, empathy, and romance. You'll have plenty of time to meet more men in your lifetime, so I wouldn't worry about it. Story 69. Honestly, I would say it's important, but at 17, you are already your own person. I was raised in a similar way. I didn't get a stepfather until my mid-teens. Now I am a father and husband. I may not be able to change the oil in my car, but my family has no complaints about my masculinity. Story 70. Absolutely. Find someone who is physically active and generally makes great decisions. If you follow an unwise person, you will soon become one as well. Story 71. I wouldn't say it is necessary, but it is at least very important. A woman can tell a boy how a man should act, but a good man can show a boy how a man should act. Story 72. Men and women's experiences differ in nearly every aspect of life. While details may vary from person to person, they often share common challenges. You can certainly engage in typical friend activities with women, such as having fun and discussing shared interests. However, men and women experience and enjoy different things, leading to differences in perspectives and interactions. For deeper understanding and shared experiences, friendships with other men can be more beneficial. In contrast, finding common ground with women may prove challenging due to differing interests and experiences. Regarding mentorship, I don't believe it is essential. While having someone to guide you can be helpful, friends are often more effective in navigating interpersonal relationships. That would likely be my starting point. Story 73. Depending on where you live, it could be a matter of life and death. There are important things you need to know that women cannot teach you because they do not have that knowledge. Story 74. You might have a different mentality than most men around you. Since you still have a father, I think you need to start talking to him more. Story 75. I grew up as an only child with no male role models in my life, surrounded by an extended family full of single mothers and children. I found it challenging to respect authority figures, particularly male ones, as I got older and entered the workforce. I would say it's quite important. Story 76. Fictional male role models are valid too. Take Superman for example. He is a great masculine figure to aspire to. Story 77. It is extremely important to avoid mirroring their feminine psyche, as it can lead to disconnection from yourself. You may begin to perceive your own life from a woman's perspective. Try to cultivate close friendships with men and seek out healthy groups for men to join. Story 78. My therapist had me read a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which addresses this exact topic. I recommend you read it. Story 79. It is absolutely important. I hope you can reconcile with your dad, or if not, find ways to spend time with a man who has life experience and cares. Hopefully, this person is still within your family, but if not, look elsewhere. I had a good father and older brothers, but I also hold memories of what I learned from my martial arts instructor about life even when I was over 30 years old, starting out with him. Looking back, I feel somewhat like never meet your heroes regarding that person, but he had genuine wisdom, so I used my judgment to filter the good from the bad advice. You live, you learn. Beware of the people at work whom your coworkers consider the man. They are often hypocrites, overhyped by those who follow anything without critical thought. You know what has served me better than anything? Reading history, especially ancient and classical texts. It provides incredible perspective for dealing with life's challenges. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.